One of the most important questions in life that you'll ask yourself is, does God exist? How do we know that God exists? So I think the best way to answer that question is to say, who is God? If you remove all the preconceived biases that you might have, all the things that you know from different religions, all the things that people have told you, who is God? If you thought, if God really does exist, what qualities would God have? Well, first, what does the word God mean? When we think of the word God with a small g, we think of anything that is worshipped. But when we say God with a big G, suddenly it's a defined word. Suddenly it means that this is the real God, and the real God is the one worthy of worship. So who would be worthy of worship? Well, we instinctively think God is the creator of everything. God would be the first cause behind everything that exists. God would be the necessary being. God would be all-powerful with a will to move things into existence. God would be all-knowing. God would be eternal. God would not be like creation. God would be absolute. He would have no limits. When I say he, I don't mean he as an agenda, but the default pronoun, because God wouldn't have a gender. God wouldn't have multiples. God wouldn't be able to be broken up into parts. God wouldn't die. God wouldn't be weak or falter. That's who God is. God is the one that we turn to, and we know God can hear. We know God can help. We know that God doesn't have any limits. And so now that we have our image of God, now we can wonder, well, does God exist? We can go to the arguments of scholars of the past. We have the cause and effect argument, because everything that exists began to exist, and everything that began to exist had a cause to move them from non-existence to existence. And so if each thing that exists and that began to exist has a cause, and that cause has a cause, and that cause has a cause, then we run all the way back into either an infinite regression, which would mean that everything in that line of regression is impossible, or we would stop at a first cause. The next argument is the fine-tuning or design argument, that everything, this used to be known as William Paley's watchmaker argument, that everything with a complex design had a designer to put all of those pieces together. And in the world we see that everything is far more complex than anything that human can make. And so the designed objects of the universe point to a designer. We have patterns, uniformity, balance in everything that exists. Everything seems to exist in a constant cycle of renewal, regeneration, from the tiniest cell to the way that celestial bodies move and interact in perfect harmony in space. Everything is at the perfect place that it needs to be to sustain life on Earth and to hold everything else in balance. The only time that we see things go out of balance is when human beings decide to give in to greed. They decide to manipulate others. They decide to take what is beyond what they need. And in doing so, they take from others who need it. The next argument is consciousness and rationality. How did consciousness arise from matter which is innately dead? How did our ability to reason come from inanimate processes which perhaps can produce biological matter but can't bring our personalities and all of our unique inner experiences into the world? We have scientific reasons to believe that the universe came into existence, maybe from a single point, maybe from something else, but we believe that it came from a big bang in which all matter and forces came into being, and that the universe has been expanding ever since, and it's still expanding, and we have even got a projected death of the universe and everything that we know of that exists. Either we think the universe is going to rip apart or implode, and thus is the end of all life as we know it. But if the universe had a beginning and the universe has an end, then how did the universe come into being? It doesn't have any quality within it which would suggest that it can give rise to itself. We have no idea what it's expanding into, and everything points to the fact that something really must have put it here. Everything that we know that's transient had something which brought it into being, something which defined its lifespan, something which ultimately will determine its end. And yet the greatest thing that we know of that exists has exactly those qualities, and we don't think to look beyond it and to wonder who gave it its life and who is going to give it its end. And then the next one is our innate morality, the fact that we want to do good, the fact that we know right from wrong, and sometimes when we do wrong, and even though we wanted to do it in the first place, we feel this existential dread. We feel like maybe somebody's watching us, we feel like we've done something wrong, and that there's going to be repercussions for that wrong. But why would we feel that if through evolution we know that the fittest survive, and it doesn't matter if we take from those that are weaker, because at the end of the day, all that matters is that we survive and we carry on and we pass on our genes. Yes, there is to a certain level a need to have a society which is based on mutual, I don't want to say trust, because we don't even need to trust each other, just mutual cooperation. We have laws to keep our society stable. But ultimately, it seems that we don't always need to follow those laws, because what's done in private, how can that be held to account? And yet when we do something wrong, we feel dirty on the inside, as though there's more of a reason to not do wrong things than just the fact that we all need to live in semi-relative harmony. And then the last one, and this isn't, maybe this is not an argument from scholars of the past, but our innate system, the fact that babies seek causes for effects that they see, that if you threw a ball in front of a child, they might look back to see where the ball came from. We need a purpose to feel like our life is worth living. We need gratitude to be happy. We have an innate moral compass which holds us to account. And the only time that our morals fail us, really, is when we decide to ignore the inner voice and we decide to take what might not be ours. But if somebody takes from us, then suddenly we emphatically desire justice. We know that good feels good, even when it's of no benefit to us. We need community. Or we suffer health effects from being lonely. And communities survive longer when they have shared values, shared beliefs. This is something that religion gave, and not something that the modern world gives. In fact, we seem to be more divided than ever, because everyone has their own version of truth. And if everyone has their own unique version of truth, just like their own unique personality within, then nobody can come to common ground. We need hope to keep going, because life inevitably gets hard, but I don't see why we should keep going in a life that's difficult if none of it matters. And we need comfort when things go wrong, or even in death. It seems to be that the way we always comfort people is that we say they've gone to a better place, when in reality, if we don't believe in God, what better place is there? If this world is all that exists. And then we can look at the opposite point of view. What is life like without God? What is life like without beliefs? What does atheism assume? That our lives, our birth, our existence is accidental. There's no purpose to your life. You're simply running out of time. There's no worth to anything that you do, really, except how you feel about it. And so we have a world now that's run on feelings, and no wonder nothing gets done. Your existence never mattered, and nothing that you do matters, because everything just ends up into nothing. Morality is a social necessity and not a higher truth. And really, there's no such thing as truth, because nothing in life matters, because everything is just an accident. Everything is what we communally agree to live by. Life is just one big communal choice. And really, we know in life that the more people you get involved in a decision, the worse the decision's going to go. But then we do have opportunity for personal choice. Everything is material. And so why do we all believe that being materialistic is wrong? If our success is reproduction, then why are the lowest birth rates in the world found in the countries with the highest number of or rate of atheism. If nothing truly matters, then morality is what we choose for it to be. And that means that the sinner is equal to the saint, because what real difference is there between them except what we make it up to be? And if we're making it up, then it's not real. What difference really is there between a person and an object or a piece of trash? Because everything is just what we want it to be. And so if we want people to have no meaning, then so be it. Everything at the end of the day, according to atheism, is just a different arrangement of atoms. And that means that there is no higher purpose and there is no universal truth. And so when people feel suicidal, what is there to keep them going? What is there calling them back? What is there that makes life worth living? And why is it a problem when people commit atrocities on the earth? If God doesn't exist, then nothing at all matters.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يئوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم.